Hey guys, Steve here from Saxon Gaming. Thanks for joining me today, and thanks for viewing. So what we've got for you just now is some space engineers, so let's hop straight into it. Alrighty, so basically obviously if you've never heard of space engineers before, this is basically like Minecraft in space, with better graphics basically. Obviously we've got some tunes playing in the background just now. What I'm going to do as well, especially for this video, is I'm going to go over you some very basic tutorials. I mean very basic, nothing advanced. I'll save that for you guys to do on your own endeavours. Right now though, I'm going to turn his music down actually. It's a bit louder than I originally anticipated. That's a bit better. There we go. Alrighty. So, what we're going to do just now is I'm going to explain the blocks. This is like for brand new people who have never played the game before and just looking to learn, have a little look, sneak peek, that sort of stuff. So let's get right into what we've got first. So first things first, we've got cockpits. Now these are actually used, as the name would imply, to control whatever you're in basically. For this one, this is more of a construction cockpit. Very nice and very robust looking. Little look from the inside. You know, very compact, very nice. Now we have more like station large ship cockpits. This is more for like a station. Nice for screens there. It's a shame we haven't actually got anything that can be displayed on these screens yet. We're hoping to, obviously there is actually full modding support for space engineers. I'm pretty sure that at some point somebody's made a script for all this, but we can obviously get to that at a later date. This is also very similar, except this one also has a bit more of a broader view. So this is better for like the up-front view of ships. So for example, this one you can't actually have a close-up look from. This one, however, you can actually have a look around like this. So it's very nice in that respect. Then we've got just a little seat. Now this isn't classed as a cockpit per se, but with a little bit of intuition, this can actually be used as a cockpit as well. Next we have power supply. So here, as the name would imply, we have a nuclear reactor. Just a small one just here. Then we have a bigger one here. Obviously these are probably your most reliable power source in the game at present. They do require fuel. And once you're out of fuel, you sort of, you know, down shit creek without a paddle, so to speak. Other than that though, we can obviously have renewable power sources. For example, we have a battery here. And if you have multiple ones of these on full charge, they'll store just as much energy as any reactor would do, providing you have enough of them. And obviously they don't just charge themselves. You've got solar panels, which of course from this particular angle it's surprisingly not charging very much, so it's not very useful, this particular one. But if you were to extend it out this way where it's more vertical like this, you'd get full charges on there. It would charge that like a beast. Then of course we're moving on to some, I suppose, a bit of some more essential stuff really, and that's thrusters or propulsion. So there are a number of ways of propulsion in this game. Obviously depending on your environment. This here is an ion thruster for purely space use. This is no good in atmosphere, no good on planets. Don't try it, it will fail terribly for you. This is a hydrogen thruster. Now, these are very good in space and in atmosphere on planets. But of course, they do actually require fuel, which can be very, very expensive. So use these with caution. This, however, is an atmospheric thruster, as the name would imply. It's used for atmosphere only. Doesn't work in space at all. So, as cool as they look, try not to use them in space too much, because you'll be, once again, down shit creek without a paddle. These are just larger variants of them. So obviously, where they're large, they obviously have a greater output of thrust, as well as a greater intake of power. So to power these sort of things, you can use perhaps a couple batteries and smaller thrusters, smaller generators. But obviously, as you get to larger stuff, you require larger reactors and so forth. Obviously, with the hydrogen thruster, the bigger they are, the more hydrogen they actually cost to run. So once again, keep note of any hydrogen used in your game and stuff like that. Now we go into a bit more cosmetic stuff really as we're going further down the line. So we've got some, basically just a spotlight here. Don't think I need to explain these. Pretty much can tell what they are anyway. This is just a smaller version called, which is, as it would say, an interior light. So it's for the inside, this is more for the outside, in a nutshell. This here is a gravity generator. Don't know if you can read that. Basically, this one goes straight down, or you can reverse it to go straight up. Up or down, that's pretty much how it goes. This one is exactly the same, however, it's spherical. So basically, this does a full circle pulling inwards or pushing outwards. So if I was to turn this one off, I think I might have another one in the area. I don't actually, so good, we're in the area there. So I don't mean I'm using my jetpack, but if I was to turn this on, you'll see I'm actually going to walk around it because it's pulling me towards it rather than in a particular direction. So this can be useful for like defenses or discombobulators in a way. So it's very good in that respect. But of course, you try to do anything, it's kind of difficult. Get a cool effect here where you just, like, I'm not even touching anything on my keyboard or mouse right now. Just by using this, I'm just spinning on my own at this point. Obviously, that can be quite fun to use, but also quite annoying as well if you're not careful with it. So let's get back to our main gravity. We'll start walking on the floor normally again. There we go. Alrighty, so here we have basically the bread and butter, which is communications and detection. So this is an antenna. This can do everything you would expect it to do. It can broadcast your signal so you can see where you are. It can communicate with your team and other players in the world, as well as you can use it for the creation of drones. We'll get into that obviously later down the line, that sort of stuff. For now though, we'll just cover the basics of the blocks. This right here is a beacon. Works exactly the same as the antenna, except you can't really communicate with this. This is more so you can send a signal and you can be seen over a great distance. This is an ore detector, so don't really need to explain that. Lets you find ores inside materials, for example asteroids, that sort of thing. Now we move to cargo. So for some reason this has moved for me. I did have a little thing there of a smaller version, but this was on a large ship and station grid. So obviously I didn't explain that yet, but basically there are grids in this game where you have like a small ship grid or a large ship grid. So for example it says new small ship, new large ship, new station. These two use the same blocks. This one has their own unique blocks. For example, just ignore this menu here. We'll come to that at another point. Just getting this replaced down here. Alrighty, so obviously this is a large grid right now. This is a small cargo container. That's a large cargo container. But this is on a small grid, and this is actually a medium cargo container. So for a small ship, this is reasonably big. For a station, this is actually small. Obviously, you'll get more used to the orientation of that as we go through this little mini-series, and of course into more basically perhaps in the future for some more playthroughs. We have actually got planned for the future there. No exact date of when we'll be getting that out to you guys, but obviously we're going to be obviously planning maybe a little playthrough. Maybe not so much like dramatize it, but more just like just generally do some building, some colonizing, that sort of thing, trying to solve some issues, and if it would come across that sort of thing. Moving swiftly onwards, we come into more like accessibility, so doors. So this right here is an airtight blast door, if you will. It comes out, it's actually registered as a hangar door, but quite frankly, these are like very good blast doors for emergencies. For example, if you have a certain wall section to your ship that gets a breach, you can tighten these down, batten down the hatches, cuts off the circulation, so you don't actually lose any oxygen. This, I'm not even going to explain this. It's a door. Pretty simple. I hope I don't have to explain that. If I do, kind of concerning just a little bit. It's exactly the same, but it's just more fancy. It slides. You know, very pretty, but once again, just a door. Now we're getting to the most crucial part, and the whole reason anybody plays space engineers for a large aspect of it, and that is the productivity. So to start off with, we have a refinery. Now, as you'd expect, this is space engineers. Obviously, while we're building stuff and creating stuff, but like any resource for using game, you need to gather those resources. So this in particular, you gather ores. So for example, you use the refinery to refine ores, as it would suggest. So for example, iron ore into iron ingots. That will then go to this, which is an assembler, which will then turn them iron ingots into resources. For example, steel plates. And that's basically it. Everything else along here is more necessity based, but we'll get around to that. Next thing you know, we have a blast furnace. So this is basically a refinery on steroids, but it's for three in particular resources. I'm not going to go into those just yet. I will save that for the playthrough when we get around to it. For now though, it is basically just for a certain amount of resources if you need to bolster your production in a certain area. This here is one of those vital pieces. This is an oxygen generator. Now, as you can imagine, we're in space. There's no oxygen, so an oxygen generator is kind of important. Obviously, I can take my helmet off for you guys here. We're in creative, so I'm not going to suffocate. But in reality, this would kill me in a survival game. This is a medical bay, which is normally linked up to the oxygen generator there. So, more or less, now we sound like a bit of a parrot now. It's more necessity based, and the name of all these is pretty self-explanatory. So in this case, this is where you can spawn. This is also where you can heal yourself, refill your oxygen tanks, and your hydrogen tanks, so you can still use your jetpack. Now, this is a storage for your oxygen. So obviously, if you for some reason don't want to put an oxygen generator on your ship, let's say it's compact, not got much room, and you want to conserve some space, instead of putting generators down and a full set of piping, you just put some oxygen generators down with maybe an air vent to fill up a small room of oxygen. And as I just mentioned, this is an air vent. I'm not going to explain that, we all know what they do. The only cool feature about this really is that it can also pull oxygen out of an atmosphere to help you store it in these tanks, so it works both ways there. Now we get to the fun bit. Now these next three are defences. So this is a Gatling turret. Very good against things like asteroids and players and small ships. Even large ships actually. So it's a very good all-round turret. This is a missile turret. Now this is deadly against small ships. One hit and it basically kills any small ship. A large ship, however, does take multiple shots, but they're not very good in groups. So trust me, I'll show you in later videos, but for now we'll move on to the next one. So this is an interior turret. So like the interior light, this is just for your inside. Not very good against much apart from players. Maybe very lightly armed small ships to like damage vital areas that are exposed, but anything with armor on, and it's basically you're taking pot shots at this point. Now it comes to tools. So this is a drill. Very nice business end on this one. This is a large grid drill. The small grid does look quite different, but obviously you can still tell exactly what it is. This is a grinder. And here we have a welder. These look exactly the same on both large and small grids, so you can always tell what they are. Once again, we have ourselves a rocket launcher here. Now, there is a rocket launcher and some Gatling guns for small grids. I did have some set up, I'm not too sure what happened to them. Either way, we'll just move on. Now, this is more necessity really, just to show you guys. These are just some plain old wheel blocks. So these are actually very good for like bracing impacts. For example, if you build something like a small ship that's you've got a metal floor on it, you try to land it and you end up denting up all your metal and it doesn't look good anymore, you destroy some stuff. You can stick a wheel on it, even without like not necessarily to drive it, more just to land it softly so nothing gets damaged. These go in 3 different sizes. A small one, which is 1 by 1 by 1, 3 by 1 by 1, and finally we have a large one. I'm not 100% sure on the dimensions on this one. I think that's 5 by 2, I think, something like that. Now, pretty much we have here is a steering essentially. Slightly, the first two are the same wheel size. The third is a slightly smaller but thicker wheel. But more or less, these gives you suspension. So I don't know if I'm affected by bumping into it. Didn't really. It's too heavy. Basically, this will be act as your suspension, your steering, and everything you need to be able to control your vehicle. These also come in 3 sizes once again. Moving swiftly onwards, we have blast door blocks. Now, these are exactly the same as what we walk on, basically. But these are more as they would apply for blast doors. So this actually has a different collision, and they're ever so slightly thinner than regular blocks. Let me see if I can show you actually. So if I just stick a block down here, you'll see the block is actually thinner on both sides. Not so much height-wise, but width-wise, they are actually thinner. So if you do have it, so you can actually fit them into. We can't necessarily fit it this way, but combined with these blocks here, which are the edges, you can actually make some blast doors that are airtight. Well, actually, glad I correct myself there. They're not airtight, but you can't walk through them, and they don't dent up your ship. Now, these are just plain old ledge blocks. Very good for obviously making a flush finish though. The collision actually stops about where my cursor is. So, when you do land it on something, you do have elbow room to make it look airtight. And these obviously for corners rather than just flat edges. All serve the same, all work and serve the same purpose. Now we come on to basically the blocks you'll use most of the time. And basically your blocks come in 4 formats. A square, a slope, a corner at an angle, and almost like a full block with a corner angle sliced off it. So these do work together more than you'd expect they would. I'll give you a small example just now. If I can find the blocks I'm looking for. There we are. Okay. So for example, if you wanted to build a flush edge, you could do that. And it's a lot, obviously I can make it look easy here, but it's a lot easier once you learn it. It's very simple to use, and very, very good looking as well. Next set of blocks are exactly the same shape, but these are comprised of heavy armor. Now, where this is light armor, it's good for structural integrity, but not very good against bullets or missiles. This, however, a bit more tanky. That should absorb a lot more damage, and mainly used to sort of buff out any large ships you don't really want to get destroyed by incoming attackers. Once again, they'll come in their formats. I've already got on my little tool here, my little tool belt, so we can actually get that built for you ever so quickly. So they do look slightly different on the uprise with the slopes. But obviously, as you come towards the back zone, you can actually get like a military pattern evolving onto them there. Anyway, obviously you can use those, you get the idea. They're pretty simple to use. Next we've gone to a vital area, which we won't actually use in this video, but obviously we'll use in the next one, just to get you guys doing it there. So here we have a conveyor. This pulls and pushes resources from your pipes into your systems. Very, very important this. We'll show you this in the next video for space engineers. Here we have some pipes. And now this is interesting, these next two. So this is a collector. So this will actually absorb any material that comes into contact with it and store it through your pipes or your conveyors into any kind of storage. Or into itself even, because it does have its own storage. So that's very good for like collecting ores. For example, you can use a gravity gatherer for when you're mining. So you can just mine away at an edge, use gravity to drop the ore. Because remember, there's no gravity in space, unless you're near planets and stuff like that. So you can actually use that to your advantage. Manipulate this atmosphere you're around and the situation you're in to make stuff more effective. This is a connector. And this, as it allows you, as it would say, allows you to connect to things. For example, stations and ships. Once you are connected, you see there's this little white band around it here. So this is used more or less to connect up your ship. Once you connect, this will go green, meaning you have a stable connection. So you can then transfer resources from your ship into stations to other ships, refuel, recharge any batteries as well, and obviously refill any hydrogen for any hydrogen thrusters you're using. The next ones are more technical really. So we have here a rotor. I don't think I really need to explain it. Very good for making like turret bases, folding doors, that sorts of thing. If you've got a more than a average brain cell count than myself, then you can use this to make some really interesting things. You can obviously check out lots of other YouTube channels, and they've got some really good inventions on there, especially on the workshop as well. Here we have a piston. Works very well with the rotors to make some really advanced mechanics in the game. These two devices alone can actually make it so you can create some extremely advanced things. Stuff I personally can't make, but I'll have a go at making it for you guys anyway. That's all, just so you get an idea. This here is a merge block. Like these two, a very unique piece. Now this is most often used as like a blast door access. So more or less it's meant to be designed like this. I'll give you a quick example just now. So you actually normally have, we'll just grab any old block at this point. Ignore the fact these are connectors, just go with them. You'd actually see, you'd use this for like large ships, where in space you'd have these two connect with these merge blocks here into a parallel side, and you can actually walk and create an airtight seal between two ships. Sort of like, I don't know if you guys have ever played Colonial Marines, but the little space tether where they connect this Sulaco to the other ship, and you can actually get people walking between them. It acts very similar to that. Next we have landing gear. This is obviously very useful for just holding on to stuff, parking your ships, that sort of thing. Now this works with your thrusters. Where are they? Thrusters down there. We'll get rid of that actually. So this is the storage for all your hydrogen. I don't really need to explain too much about that, but this can take a very long time, and obviously you need to monitor this very carefully whenever you're using hydrogen in space. So if you run out of hydrogen in space, you're kind of doomed, because once you start moving, remember there's no wind in space, so you can't stop basically until you hit something, or you get some force slowing you down on your ship. This here is a jump drive. Now this is very, very interesting. So if you want to travel very long distances, you can do so with this. Saves you spend the next 20 minutes flying in one direction to get from planet to planet. This here is a sorter block. So this is not used too often, but this is more so, for example, mixing this with a collector, what we showed you down there. You can throw any kind of resources on the top, providing you've programmed these sorters all correctly and piped it all in the way you need it piped. You can throw anything in one side, whether that be guns, ammunition, steel plates, ores, and it will organise them all into the right places. Put them into unique cargo containers, all labelled with certain things. For example, 3 cargo containers with 3 sorters, and one will drop only drop steel plates into one, ores into another, and guns in the other. You could do that with this block. Makes obviously organising very simple, very easy. And the next 3 are more modifiers for stuff. For example, where is it? So all the way down there, where the refinery is. You know, let me show you actually. So there's actually these little ports on the back of the refinery. These little square ones here. So you can actually attach these to them. Let me show you actually. So we do actually have your little ports here. They do work in all different directions, like this. Or even, you could do this. So you can actually connect another refinery next to it. So it'll actually start helping the other one as well. So they do work on both ports, and I'll show you that again. Only one side lights up green. There are different ones there. We won't go into them too much for now, because they're more of the sort of the thing you go over if you really need to use them. Generally, they do help with like producing stuff. For example, this will help you with your productivity, this will help you with your efficiency, and that will help you with your power usage. We'll go through with that obviously at a later date when it's more needed. Probably in the playthrough actually. This is actually a cryopod. Very different what you've probably seen in the films. But if you have any items on you, for example my tools here, if I was to die or leave the game outside of a cryopod, I would lose these things and any items I had on me. When I hop in here, whenever I leave the game, that would then mean I would actually save my items, providing I don't die from like somebody shooting me, blowing it up, or cutting off the oxygen supply. And then when I came back to the game, I'd still have all my gear. Now, the final two blocks I'm going to show you today, as we start bringing the video to a close, will be the camera block, which you can use remotely, keep a bit of surveillance and for parking, and a sensor block, which is used for anything like alarms. You get close to a certain orbit, lets you know, or you can use it to open doors, blast doors, lock doors, and do all kinds of wonderful stuff. Like if you, for example, if somebody walks into a room, turns all your turrets on for the interior turrets, so almost like a security wing, if you will. And endless amounts of things you can do with this block. Alright, so that's all the blocks I had to show you today. Now, I know this has been a very hit and miss video today. I've been a bit robotic in this one actually, but the sheer number of blocks in this game, I've only shown you some. As I'm sure you saw in the menu, there are a lot of blocks. I remember back in the day, there was only this many. From this point downwards, that was it. So literally all this point there was gone. This was literally just here. There's tons of blocks in the game to go through. These are more the necessities you'll see more often. Obviously, very brief explanation on them all. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory, to be honest with you. They don't normally require too much explaining. Literally there, apparently. Obviously, as we do, we've got a playthrough being planned. We're still in the process of getting it sorted and planning it out, getting the people involved, that sort of thing. The person who will be joining me, Alex, is actually very busy at the moment, so he can't join me for the playthrough just yet. But obviously we're still in the process of planning it, so don't expect to see it in the next couple of weeks. We'll probably fill out other videos with other kinds of content like first-person shooters, other indie games, that sort of stuff. For now though, this has been my little introduction to Space Engineers. Very simple video here, just explaining what's in the game. If you already own it, you probably know what most of these do anyway. If not, I hope this gave you a little bit of insight into what Space Engineers is. In the next video, we'll be covering more usage of these blocks and how to build a very simple station and a very simple small ship. For example, a miner. In any case, that's it for this video, guys. Remember to like and subscribe. If you want to see more Space Engineers, definitely hit me up. You know, I'll try as best as I can to get any kind of playthroughs, that sort of things out there. Maybe a mini-series would just be by myself, if you guys request it a lot. In any case, guys, until the next video.